So thanks for joining us, everybody. Happy Thursday evening. We're very fortunate to have Uncle Gerry and Benjy with us today to share about this topic of engaging parents in our workshops. And I'm really excited about this topic. I really feel like this is the next step for our youth ministries and our workshops, and figuring out how to partner between parents and youth ministries so that the longevity of experiences in youth ministry can really be created. So I'm really eager to hear from these very knowledgeable brothers. Before we begin, if everybody could join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for media and the internet, and thank you for willing participants to be able to invest in their workshops and take them to the next level, Heavenly Father. We really want to invite you into this time to speak and share through Uncle Gerry and Benjy, and also to open our hearts to be able to learn whatever is relevant to our community so that we can really help parents be involved in the lives and growing and transformational experiences that their sons and daughters are going through under our care, Heavenly Father. We really know that this relationship between parents and children is so crucial, Heavenly Father, and we do our best to invest in it and to help that relationship really be successful for all of our young people. Again, we really want to invite you into this time, and we offer all these things in the name of David and Kayleigh Moffitt, a blessing for family, Adieu.
Adieu.
I will go ahead and hand it over to Uncle Gerry and Benjy.
Okay. We had thought, okay, I'm just going to jump right into it. So basically, we got invited to Camp Coho for the summer to do a workshop, and then I asked what the theme was so I could tailor the material, and they told me it was parent-child relationship. And boy, that really jumped out at me, because there's just so much about that. One thing is that I've really been sensitized in the last several years that we are moving from the age of wilderness into the age of settlement. Now, the reason that that's important is because Father has been, I think, first gen, my generation, and second gen, up, all the way into the 30s, really experienced a lifestyle, a way of life that was very much wilderness. So the standard was, to sacrifice, to give up everything, including loved ones, even orphan, it was really a rough way of living. And I think what happened was that we really thought that was a standard of living, that was the way a life should be lived in the principle. So we kind of transmitted that whole mindset to our first gen. But what happened was that in the past 20 years, or even 30 years, Father speeches have been taking an increasingly different tone, which is much more centered on explaining the original way of life in the garden before the fall. And I guess we really didn't pay attention to that because we were focused on the principle of restoration through indemnity, which is really in the DP, the Black Book. It's over 400 pages, and only 40 pages are devoted to talking about principle of creation, the original way of life. All the rest of it is fall and restoration. So our whole concept of life was really about dealing with the fall and dealing with restoration. But since the Black Book came out, Father said that he would be revealing more, and what I noticed through the lens of DP was that, especially when the Holy Books came out, that his emphasis has really been teaching us much more about the original way of life and love. And then it dawned on me, Father makes it very clear that what he wants to establish is relationships and families that are much more in line with the original way of life in the garden before the fall. So that's really a different way of life, and it's not focused on guilt and restoration and panic about failure, historical failures, but it's really focused on I call it a mindset of soldiers versus builders. So my generation was clearly soldiers, and we passed that to our children. But what Father's been talking about in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and in the 2000s has been increasingly about he's been expanding the original way of life, and it's really for builders. It's not for soldiers, less and less. And one of the glaring evidences of this is in the Cheonsang. It's 2,000 pages, and almost half of it is an expansion of chapter 1. So you can understand that whereas only a very tiny part of DP, a very tiny part was Principle of Creation. In Cheonsang, you've got a book this big, and pretty much half of it is chapter 1. So if you look at all of the speeches that are dated in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and in the 2000s, it's not about sacrifice and indemnity as much as it's more about original ways of life and love. So that really means a different kind of parent-child relationship than we've experienced. So that's big, and that pattern is for second gen to transition over to, for the sake of fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and seventh gen, all going forward. So it's really a change in our focus, a change in lifestyle, a change in concept. So that's one thing that was really, really important. So the other thing that when we were told that the focus was parent-child relationship, it zeroed in on me because I had just recently matched Victor, my son, and I realized that when Victor told me he was ready to be matched, we pretty much, when he was 18, because of the differences in our views during the teenage years, we had found it convenient to stop talking to each other. So suddenly he's 18 and so he says, I'm ready to be matched, and we haven't really been talking for years. And so I really had to catch up, and we saw that lack of communication before he could successfully be matched, which was like 6 years later, 6.5 years later. And that was an alarm for me going off, because I realized that probably a lot of my generation has, and his generation has found it also, for the same reasons, very convenient to not talk, because it's less problematic when you're not talking so much. So I think the parent-child issue was very important to me, because it was very clear to me, you can't get matched, you know. You can't get matched unless you have a real communication going on. So that was the second thing. And the third thing, I've just forgotten. So I'll just hand it over to Benjy.
All right, sure. Yeah, so basically, this is the kind of, Camp Coho was a one-time experience for us, for Uncle Gerry and I. It was very unique because we're a cross-generational team. We're both parents. We're both very passionate about parent-child relationship. Uncle Gerry works in evangelism department, and I work in the blessing and family ministry department. So really our departments work very well together and balance each other well. So we were asked to go to Camp Coho. So immediately we decided we have to somehow involve the parents and see where they're at. And we have to prepare them, because when we go to Camp Coho, we're going to give the kids a lot of content. We're going to give them assignments. We're going to give them follow-up assignments, which involve communicating with their parents while they're at the workshop. And if the parents aren't ready to receive those letters or phone calls or texts or emails, whatever it is, then it can be a very negative, distraughting experience for the kids if they're not received well. So we really tried to go there to also hear the parents and see where they're at. It was a very unique experience. And anyways, what I really experienced and learned was that it was a confirmation for me. It was affirmation that the parent-child relationship is really the core of everything. It's the core of our teaching. It's the core of our lives. It's the core of the lives of the people, of the youth that we're serving. And it's the core of our own lives. And it's the cause of our greatest joy, our true authentic joy in our life. And it's the cause of our greatest sorrow sometimes, if it's not handled well. So that was really confirmation that the parent-child relationship is really impacting the youth in many ways, especially in the area of matching, blessing, sex, relationships, pornography, everything. That kind of area the parent-child relationship really influences a lot. And so we kind of did an experiment when we went to Columbus, Ohio, to meet with the parents. Then we went to Indianapolis, Indiana, meet with the parents, and we went to Chicago to meet with the parents. And one thing that I asked when I talked, I asked the parents, what kind of relationship do you want with your child? What is your ideal relationship that you want to create? So we kind of had them envision this. And I've done this a few times in my work with workshops and with parents and with their children. And they always say the same thing. It's always, I want a relationship that is honest and open and trusting and responsible, kind of an honest, open relationship. And when we go to Camp Coho and we ask the same question, what kind of relationship would you like with your parents? Guess what they say? All the time. I want a relationship that's open and honest and trusting. So this is we realize is a huge disconnect between the parent and child, is essentially they want the same thing, but somehow they're not communicating that need and that desire to each other in the right way. So it kind of comes down to the way that they're, relating to each other, the way that they're having give and take on an everyday basis, the way that they're listening and sharing with each other. So when we were there, we tried to do with the parents, we did some live active listening practice with people sitting next to them. And also at the Camp Coho workshop, we did some live active listening practice with them as well. So anyways, through this experience, it was really insightful to see that the parent-child relationship is something that is actually tangibly can be incorporated into our education, into our workshops, into our daily lives. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about. And I guess what Kaylee wants to brainstorm about, right, is how we can incorporate, involve, engage parents and children together as we do these workshops, right? Because we all know, all of you are leaders, all of you know that it can be very easy to go to a workshop and then come home to how reality is. And then, your parents aren't inspired as you are, or maybe they're not really sure about what kind of experience you had, and it can kind of fade away. But the idea of this model is that we're not inspiring people to go home and do something. We're actually trying to give them an experience while they're there, transform their relationship with their parents while they're at the workshop, not when they go home. So that's the kind of purpose of the assignments and the homework, is to give them opportunity to actually work on their relationships while they're actually there. And the way that we did it, I guess we'll get into that next, is we did a certain method, which is kind of a seminar style live workshop method. And from what we understand, a lot of the parents from the youth, especially from the winter workshops, are all over the place. So maybe in some communities, a live workshop or seminar or meeting isn't very doable, right? So I did want to share that, Uncle Gerry. So I guess I'll give it back to you or Kaylee.
Okay. Let me give you a little content, okay? So, because yeah, it was what happened was that when Kosuke and Kensei asked us to do the workshop, then I was going to teach the young people a certain kind of content, and then encourage them to bring their relationship with their mom and dad to a different level. That's why we realized if we're going to do that, we better get the parents on board first. And that's why then we started reaching out, and through David Rendell, we were able to get the pastors of Indianapolis, Columbus, and Chicago to allow us to speak to the parents for about 2 hours. So, and so we told the parents, now listen, this is what we're going to be telling your kids, and your kids might get really inspired about these ideals and want to develop this relationship with you. So please, if they do write to you, Benjy said, we didn't want the kids to be terribly disappointed, and we wanted the parents to also be excited and ready. What I'm going to show you now is a quick thing of what I explained, okay? So I'm going to share the screen. Can you see this? Realms of True Love? Everybody, can you see this?
No. Yes, now we can.
Okay, Realms of True Love. All right. Basically, the ideal that we're shooting towards is that grandparents are well, this is the ideal of the principle anyway. Father makes it very clear in Chansung Gyeong that the central position of the four-position foundation is actually not an invisible God. And we've been used to thinking of the center of the four-position foundation as an invisible God. But Father has really been explaining, and it's in the Chansung Gyeong, that there's a fifth realm of love, which is the grandparents' position. And that's actually the center of the four-position foundation. That's the position that ideally would represent God. And the reason that jumped out at me is because basically, if I look at life in three stages, from 1 to 33, 34 to 66, and 67 to 99, my generation is actually stepping into becoming grandparents, that age. And that's supposed to be where we're supposed to represent God the most. So that's why I needed to speak to the parents to really tell them, look, don't feel like you're being put out to pasture because leaders have to be 40 and under. Actually, you're now in your 60s. You are entering the most important period of your entire life, which is the period where you have to represent God to your grandchildren. That's actually a huge responsibility, I think. It's more important than any public position you'll ever have. Does this make sense? Hello?
Yes, I think everybody's muted.
Oh, okay. So that's what I've been telling parents, and it ties into this. I'm going very fast. It ties into this idea of the three great kingships, which is another one of these concepts that goes in one ear out the other. But what three great kingships basically means is that it's a model that draws upon how monarchs, how kings and queens raise up their sons and daughters, and that is that every king and every queen, it doesn't matter Asia or Europe or any place else, every king and every queen sees their son and sees their daughter as the future monarch. And so that's how they raise them up. And that's what blessed families are supposed to be doing, actually. That people, once again, people my age, stand in the background, increasingly letting their children become the monarch. And relinquishing leadership, actually. That's what kings and queens do. That's why in England, for example, they have the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother stays in the palace, and whereas at one point in her life, she was the queen of all of England and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, At a certain point, she steps down, and then her son or her daughter then becomes the king. Their son and daughter become the monarch. And what the king of the past does is just stay there in the background as support. So this is also a model that is very important for us to understand. It means that second gen or young unificationists need to be thinking that they are the ones who will be becoming the kings of the present. They're stepping out of kings of the future, which is children. But king of the present is like I said, the middle part of one's life. So they need to have that awareness, and my generation needs to have the awareness that you don't hold on to power until you keel over from old age. But actually, you should have the consciousness of raising up your children with the intention of stepping down while you're still quite healthy and alive. But you are the king who has reigned in the past, and you give the monarchy to your children. So that's what three great kingships means, and that's the model we're supposed to be having. Second gen stepping up little by little to become the kings of the present. First gen stepping down, not out of the picture, but but rather giving responsibility. Another point is that, this is another point that we talk to both parents and to children. We told the parents that every single child is unique unique individual in the life of God. And then when we went to Camp Coho, we also brought out that point that every young person is a unique existence. There's never been anybody like them. There never will be anybody like them. So this is something also that we don't really talk about very much. But this is the truth of the matter. So parents need to really stop comparing their children, and really think that their child is unique and for all eternity in the life of God. And the reason children don't think of this is because they're not raised this way either. The last point is that father's position is that every child has a capacity for genius, an incredible capacity to do something or a number of things in a very unique way. So those are the concepts that I had that I really wanted to share, or that we did. We shared with the parents and we shared with the young people. I was going really fast, but it took me 3 days to do this at Camp Coho. And about 50 minutes to share with the parents. But those are the ground basis ideas, and then Benjy. There were testimonies about all of these things, and then exercises. Okay, I'm done. Hello?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Uncle Gerry?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to find the controls for it. Stop share. Got it. Okay.
Great. Was that all that you guys wanted to share?
I'm done.
Okay.
I think in relation to what you guys will be dealing with in your workshops. Like I said, there's 8 winter workshops happening this winter.
Yeah.
This month. Wow. Yeah. I think one insight that I really gained was the value of assignments, or we call them action steps, because they already have assignments from school usually. So they wanted to call them action steps. So an action step being with the to allow them to actualize what they're learning, to create the relationship they want, or take ownership of first envision the relationship they want, and then actually take a very small action step, even if it's writing a letter. And I gave a testimony from my experience. For me, it was what the kind of turning point in my relationship with my folks was giving them my life testimony. And I shared that experience and how that was. And I told them I wrote it. I didn't call them. I didn't want to talk to them. So I just wrote it and I put it in a mail and I sent it to them. So that was what I needed to do in order to further our relationship with my parents. So I kind of shared it like that, and and everyone at this workshop has something that they want to do in order to create the relationship they want, and the idea is to encourage them to make that step while they're at the workshop, whether it's a phone call or a simple text saying this is what I'd like to do, or whatever, an email, a letter. Anything works as long as it's what they want to do and they can take ownership of it. So I really realized that's a true key, because it allows them to not just waste time being inspired and then facing reality when they get home. So it kind of allows the transformation to happen on site live. So I feel like that was a good takeaway. And the other good takeaway, I'm just kind of going to name a few things, is the power of active listening as a practice to do during the workshop. It's really this is something we do during our blessing workshops. Level 2 blessing workshop and level 3, because level 3 is for couples to learn how to communicate with each other. So we just have a couple come to the front and share something, and then just basically listen and then repeat what they said. And then the facilitator asks, how does that feel to be heard? To be really listened to openly and sincerely. And that kind of activity is the basis for parents and children to talk about stuff, and learn how to take steps to talk about some bigger things without getting emotional or making judgments to each other. So for them to actually experience, that kind of active listening at the workshop is always a highlight for people. And the other insight is that communicating with parents beforehand about the content of the workshop is very essential. And that can be done through a number of different methods, including an in-person seminar if many parents are in a local area together. And in order for what Uncle Gerry and I realized is, in order for that to be successful, it has to come through the local pastor, or through the district pastor, or through the central figure of the parents. Because if we go through that challenge, learns that it's not just a bunch of young people coming, or in our case, it's not just headquarters coming to our community and telling us what to do, or it's not just a bunch of youth leaders telling us how to parent. It's through the support of the vertical line. It's through the support of the pastor that is endorsing this kind of, please come to this webinar or Zoom call, or please come to this live, 1 hour seminar after church, whatever it is. And our youth pastors would like to explain to you what the content of this workshop is going to be. And they want to prepare you, and also seek your input about maybe what could happen at the workshop. You never know what might happen. So that's very important, not just for the sake of preparing the parents, but also for the sake of building a foundation for the children for the youth to come to the workshop ready. Yeah. And then just finally, if I can mention, the important that because this is my area, is matching blessing. It's really truly a big thing on the minds of youth, of everyone. It's a big thing. It's a big deal. Matching, marriage, blessing, sex. It's a really big deal, and it can be addressed in a very positive way, I feel. And we have, the level 1, level 2 blessing education curriculum, whatever is appropriate, that can kind of help facilitate that kind of conversation, discussion in a healthy way. And it's really, the youth pastors have a great honor and responsibility, I feel, to counterbalance the crappy education about sex and relationships that we have all been exposed to our whole lives. It's our responsibility to counterbalance that with good education, a really positive education about marriage and sex and relationships. So that's really, I really feel like that's a really big deal. I hope you would agree that it's a really big deal for them. So yeah, that's all I have to share.
Yes, we definitely agree. Thank you. Great. Well, since we have a little bit of time, we have 3, if I'm counting right, we have 3 workshops present on this call. And since it's a small group, maybe we can give a chance for the different workshops to kind of respond and think about how they might want to incorporate some of this into their workshop. And then maybe, you know, Uncle Gerry and Benjy, if you have any thoughts to add on to those responses, this would be a good way to move forward on this concept. Is that good with everybody? Thumbs up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So how about, can we do the District 1 Pennsylvania workshop? Can you guys, maybe Melissa, you can share first, and then Zenas, if you want to add anything on, you're welcome to. And Melissa, we're just, you know, responding to what you've heard, and then just first thoughts, what are you thinking? What do you think you might want to incorporate into your workshop and engage parents in that way?
I really love that talk. It's so good. So like something I really like was that idea of don't compare your children. Last year, this is interesting because last year's workshop, we talked a lot about families and parents especially, and it was really good. We had one activity where we had family testimonies, family sharings, and so each participant, well, like we had time, and so we asked everyone if they wanted to go, so most people went, and it was interesting because a lot of kids are really struggling with their parent-child relationship, and a lot of like negative things came out, and I know for our community it was kind of like, it was good that people were honest, but we didn't really have like something to fix it, and like even like we reported things up but nothing was really done. And anyway, and so like anyway, when you were talking, like the one thing I really heard that stuck out to me was like that idea of like each child being a unique and like perfect individual, and kind of like don't compare your children, because like that was like a big problem that like kids were saying, or like they really felt like, oh man, why am I crying? Like they really felt like their parents were always like comparing them, and they like couldn't feel like the love that their parents have for them, and they were like complaining a lot. And of course, like it's good that they are heard, or like they share what's really on their hearts and how they feel. But it's also like, I mean, I think everyone knows that like each parent loves their child. They might not show it that way, but they do love them. And so anyway, like this year's workshop, like we're not going so much in that direction because we have a different theme. But one activity we're doing is we're having the kids write letters to their parents, and we're going to be actually like mailing them for them. So, because a lot of times kids write letters, but then they don't actually like give it to their parents. But of course, like when you were saying, like, we really want them to be received well, because that's like a big thing, is like,
Right.
like, oh, okay, like, and we don't, of course, like we want them to receive it in like a non-judgmental type of way, and like, yeah. And so I really want to do something, like I really want to have a meeting ideally, but I don't know if that's possible just because we only have like 2 weeks. We only have like one Sunday, but I think I might be able to. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what to do, but I really want to make sure like the parents aren't like, I just want to make sure like the kids are able to like feel loved by their parents. Like that's something like that a lot of kids like struggle with, and I didn't know that they struggle with that, but that's like a big thing, at least for our kids in our community. And so I really want them to be received well, and like not judgmental, and just like supporting their children. So I'm not 100% sure what to do, but I want to do something.
Thanks, Melissa. How about we give a chance for Benjy and Uncle Gerry, if you guys have a short response, any just thoughts that come to mind. Yeah, Uncle Gerry.
when we decided to talk to the parents, the elders in the community didn't know what to make of it. So we also had a very, very short time to pull it together. Mm-hmm. So if you have a short, but we did, and it was so worth it. So if you feel like the workshops are on top of you, that's really not the problem so much. It's really important that you open your heart, if at all possible, to a council member or one of the elders or the pastor, and say, look, this is what we're going to be asking the kids to write a letter, but we don't want the letter to arrive home and the parents just not receive it, because if they don't receive it, the kids are going to feel frustrated and say, I knew this wasn't going to work, I shouldn't have done it, and it's going to make it even harder. Right. So in the weeks that you have, instead of looking at them as too short, look at them as you do have time to just talk to one of the pastors, so that you can talk to at least some parents whose kids are going to be coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. Some parents is better than no prep. So even if they don't all come, it's still worth it.
Yeah, it is worth it. That's a good point. Just to echo what Uncle Gerry said, imagine, okay, because we traveled for 3 days or 2 days, 3 different communities right before the workshop. So meeting the parents of these actual kids, one couple in particular, came up to me to talk, and were in tears and sharing about these difficulties that they're having with their teenage son. And to actually go to the workshop, to see him, to know his name, to know his parents, and he doesn't even know who I am yet, is a very, very strong foundation for a long-term relationship that I have still with him. Even though I just came, guy from headquarters, but I have this strong foundation with him. We still keep in touch, and we talk about things, over Facebook. It's really, really tremendously worth the time and investment or difficulty that it was very difficult. We had to do a lot of difficult flying and driving and renting cars to go to those 3 communities. But they welcomed us with open arms. Surprisingly, we were kind of, I guess, anticipating some maybe some, I don't know, resentment or some backfire, but really openly welcomed us. It is, another option you could do is, I would recommend, is like an email message to the parents. I would recommend through the pastor or district pastor, whoever would be appropriate. And in that letter, explain, what the content of the workshop is, what the kids are going to be experiencing. And then in that letter, invite them to join you in a meeting after Sunday service. You said there's like one or a few Sundays left, just for like an hour, to have a discussion, some give and take. That's all it really is give and take about their relationship with their child, about their desires, and listen to them. And you can even, this is what Uncle Gerry and I did, is we invited all parents, even if their kid isn't going to the workshop. We said any parents with school-age kids, high school-age kids, or middle school, whichever one, is invited to this meeting. And it was really good, because we had a very diverse group of people, and more people showed up that way.
Just to know, workshop started on Monday. So we flew in, and we gave to Indianapolis on Saturday morning. Saturday evening, we spoke in Columbus, Ohio, and Sunday we spoke in Chicago, and then Monday we were in the workshop. So that's, how tight it was, but it was really worth it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Thank you. How about Yasu? Let's give you a chance to respond from your point of view, thoughts on your local workshop. What are you thinking?
Okay. So actually, I'm not really part of this workshop creating it. I just signed up to be a general staff. So yeah, I don't even know if there's any parent-child relationship thing happening. But I could definitely let them know about this whole meeting and the content of it. One thing that really I liked was already from the very beginning. I mentioned the difference in mindset, and actually I feel like that's what I'm going through right now. It's just my own personal relationship with my parents isn't the greatest or the ideal that I want, and that's probably because we have different mindset. My parents are very soldier like, yes, and so that's very important to keep remembering whenever I talk to them in the future. And yeah, also, okay, maybe I'm just being a bit negative here, but because this workshop that we're planning on having consists of 4 states, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and Bridgeport, Connecticut. I don't know how smooth it can go with informing the parents if I tell them the creators of this workshop about this parent thing and parent-child thing, and they go on board with it, how it can be delivered to the parents, like gathering them, bringing them together, and hearing us out. But I guess that's just that can always work out, I think, if we do something. And yeah, like you said, at least few is better than none. If the parents can hear this, yeah, that's like I guess the main things I got. I just want to share something that happens on locally. Actually, so youth ministry in New Jersey locally, we have something called, starting this year or this school year, we started something called Parents' Night. This
Yasu,
is like, yeah?
you're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Oh. Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying the last Saturday of every month, except for December, we are inviting the parents for education. And so that way the parents and children together are receiving the education, and then we create discussion questions based on, like, so the parents and their child can have a discussion based on the education. This started last month, so we've only had one so far. This is actually led by Raymond Burns, and the first time the topic was just being yourself as a filial son or daughter of God. And so then the discussion was more based on the children expressing how they like what they think is important in their life right now, and then for the parents was what they think, or what was important to the parents when they were their children's age, and just started this conversation. And we're hoping to consistently have this monthly, so hopefully it can go somewhere positively. So that way, but I think another thing I did take away from Uncle Gerry and Benjy was actually having our pastor tell the parents to come, because in November we just sent out an email as like youth ministry to all the parents saying, please come, we want you to have a good discussion with your children after education. However, the turnout wasn't as great as I expected it to be. I don't know if it's because of the communication method, just with email, maybe, yeah. But I think, yeah, if Pastor Manoj talked to or made an announcement and encouraging the parents to come, that's probably, we might have a better turnout with the parents. So, yeah. And that's it for me.
Mm.
Awesome. Thanks, Yasu. I'm echoing. Is anyone echoing?
I hear echo too.
Echo. Better.
Well, Uncle Gerry wants to say
yeah, go
something.
ahead, Uncle Gerry.
One thing that really helps center the discussion is to start with DP or UT or father's words. Otherwise, it's not a stable platform for discussion, because people have different opinions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason I had actually lecture with diagrams, and those diagrams I used for the parents and for the children. And those are father's words, those are DP, that's UT. So they couldn't, say, well, I have this opinion and that's your opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So based upon father's words, it's important to base these discussions, the parent-child relationship and especially when we're redefining it, or like we're saying things like age of settlement, age of wilderness, soldier mentality, builder mentality. Those are my words. And if I didn't have backing for them, I'm pretty sure I would get attacked.
Okay. Thank you, Uncle Gerry.
That's good. Yeah. It occurred to me that, sorry, I'm getting an echo again. Okay, that's better. It occurred to me that because Coho was primary, our experience was with a workshop that focused on parent-child relationship, and which is a smooth transition to this idea of involving parents, right? And it occurs to me that a lot of workshops, in fact, probably most workshops, are not centered around the theme of exactly parent-child relationship. But as youth leaders, and as a former youth pastor myself, in most workshop settings, the topic of parent-child relationship is always brought up. It's always something that's ultimately is where, if anyone's going through some difficulties or things like that, is ultimately where it comes from, the parent-child relationship. So, despite the topic or whatever the topic may be, parent-child relationship is still a very relevant thing for any topic of workshop, because they are, for lack of a better word, they're minors. They're living with their parents. They're in a constant, intimate relationship, a daily relationship with their parents, and therefore their relationship with their parents affects all areas of their life. So, especially their future moving forward, what career they take, their relationship, their matching blessing, marriage status, all that stuff is affected by their parent-child relationship. So in the end, it's really always a good investment, regardless of what kind of topic, I think. And also, Yasu, as you mentioned, actually a lot of, because you're doing a workshop or your team is doing a workshop for 4 different districts, it makes sense to do whatever makes sense. I think it really just takes, your team to sit together and think and brainstorm. Okay, number 1, we really want to do something for the parents, to involve the parents. We don't know what it is, but we want to do something. And whatever that is, we'll make it happen. In Uncle Gerry, in our cases, we had to do a lot of give and take over email and phone to figure out the best route to take to go from these 3 cities. And at first it was only 2 or 1 or whatever, but it developed into what it was because we made it happen and we had the available resources to make it happen. So, it's really just a matter of the team coming together and figuring out, this is, getting on the same page about what you want to do, and then deciding how you want to do it. In a case of 4 districts, I would say that a Zoom meeting is a good idea, is a good option. Invite all the parents to a Zoom meeting, record it, and say if you miss it or unable to get to the meeting, then you can watch the recording. It's only 30 minutes or 45 minutes, not too long. And that's a good way to keep everybody up to speed. But of course, a live workshop is always good because there's more give and take and people can share more about their own situations and build more relationship like that. So what you could do is just, do one in Clifton or wherever the majority of the parents are, and then, record it, or have like a live Zoom session where people from other states can watch in. The idea is really to do something that, to invest in something that has the greatest returns, if you will. So I think it really just takes, coming up with something, right? But those are some ideas.
All right. Thank you, Benjy.
Yeah, great points. Thank you. Uncle Gerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, because the workshops are not focused on this, I'm still grateful for this call because this is something we really need to deal with across, nationwide. If not exactly this time, but definitely going forward.
Yeah.
And those visuals I have, by the way, I can give them to anybody who wants to work with them, or I can, I can do a Zoom.
Yeah, Uncle Gerry, if you can share those with me, then I can distribute them. I think a lot of people are going to want to use them. That'd be great.
All right.
We're getting close to 9. Real quick, Kosuke or Yoshika, do you guys want to chime in? I know Kosuke, you experienced this whole thing last year, but maybe you have some thoughts or questions concerning your upcoming workshop.
I just have one thing that, like, it was a while ago, I guess, the workshop, but I think it's a really good idea to have this, like, as a tradition to talk to the parents, like, what's going to happen, and then, like, tell them what happened, and not just for workshops, but I think that's a really awesome thing that I never really picked up on. I thought it was like a one-time thing, but actually informing them is actually a good idea, I think, in communicating, because so many the kids I know, they have a hard time communicating. So yeah,
I'm really hoping this does become a tradition. I hope everybody takes on in some way, shape, or form that fits their community. But I mean, it's the start of something great. Benjy or Uncle Gerry, do you guys want to respond or say anything? Good. Oh, Benjy.
Kaylee's wisdom and bringing this together and recognizing that this is indeed important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, I'm just sorry we didn't have more people tonight, but I'm just excited for the.
I'm really losing the audio here.
Oh.
It's very crackly.
Okay. Is it? I don't know whose it is, but we're getting to the end of our call. Does anybody have any last comments, questions, or anything like that before we pray to close? All right. Then, if everybody can go ahead and join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for just this time to share and brainstorm together on this important topic, Heavenly Father. I really pray that all the things we've talked about tonight can be lifted up to you, and that good spirit world and our ancestors can help mobilize to make this happen and to help engage the parents of our community in whatever way, shape, or form that we're trying to prepare for them to be able to understand what's happening at the workshop and what's being provided for their children, Heavenly Father. We really want to be instruments for you in developing these important relationships. So we really pray you can bless these youth pastors and leaders in their communities and truly bless their workshops, all the staff and all the kids who are coming and their parents as well, Heavenly Father. We offer all these things in the name of David and Kaylee Moffitt, a Blessed Central family, June. So let's, everybody, you can unmute yourselves. Let's clap and say thank you to Uncle Gerry and Benjy for spending an hour with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.